all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India, and our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great value plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free!
Buy now at labara.co.uk.
Well, hello and welcome to everyone joining us on the live stream. We are coming to you from Ponsforge International Sports Centre in Sheffield. This is, of course, the 2022 British Diving National Championships. This is the biggest national event of the calendar. We have the best divers competing from all over the country. We have some international guests as well. All the athletes here will be looking to guarantee their places for the World Aquatics Championships being held in Budapest, the European Aquatics Championships in Rome, and of course the Birmingham Commonwealth Games. So there's a lot to play for. But my name is Freddie Woodward. I'm an ex-member of the GB International diving team, and I'm currently being joined by Ross Haslam, who is a current member of the International GB diving team. But Ross, as we might be able to just see from the camera, we just missed it. But Ross, you are in a sling.
I am. Unfortunately,
yes,
I am.
Yeah.
I have just had some shoulder surgery, so I am currently in recovery, but we'll be getting there soon.
But that's why you're able to join me now. So,
absolutely,
I'm
yeah.
very happy to be
thank you.
Here, Ross.
Very happy to be here.
So, first event coming up, Ross. We have all of the 1 meter events today, don't we? So we're going to start with the women's 1 meter springboard preliminary round.
Absolutely.
And then obviously later on that'll be followed by the men, and then we will have the finals to both of those events later this afternoon, and also we'll have some synchronized finals.
We do. Looking forward to those.
Yeah, so that's going to be really cool. But as I say, it's 1 meter is often the competition that gets us started into a diving event.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 1 meter isn't in the Olympics. It's not an Olympic event, but it is in Commonwealth Games, it is at the Europeans, and it is at the Worlds. So it's a really good one to start with. Try and get rid of any of those nerves in the prelim, and then come back in the afternoon and hopefully smash it up. Let's see some great dives.
I mean, I really enjoyed competing on the 1 meter springboard. I definitely felt a bit less pressure. But having said that, there's a lot, as you just mentioned, Ross, there are a lot of events riding on this, aren't there?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
3 big competitions. So yeah, there are potential scores that athletes can hit, but in terms of the selection policy, things won't necessarily be decided from the 1 meter springboard, will they?
No. So as far as I'm aware, with the selection policies, a lot of the teams will be picked, and then people out of those teams will be put into the 1 meter event. So there are ways. So if for the winner of today, if they win and they get the recommended points, then they will be selected for the World Championships. If they don't get the points, then it will be down to the discretion of the selection panel.
Yeah, so it's all about getting those scores, which we'll let you know soon, and we'll see how some of the divers are getting close to that. It looks like the women are nearly ready. You can see Tilly Brown there. She stood at the back of the 1 meter board. It's not normal to have 6 1 meters, is it, Ross?
No, I think, as far as I'm aware, we have the most 1 meters in Sheffield out of any club or any pool in Britain. So yeah, nice little claim to fame there.
Yeah, big up Sheffield, big up Ponsforge. It's not that we're biased, though, is it?
No,
It's not like we
no.
dived here.
We'd never be biased about that stuff.
No, of course. What do you think, Ross, is an important thing for the preliminary round for, both the men and the women to concentrate on in a preliminary round for a 1 meter springboard event?
You know, I think we are, as divers, for our first dive, everyone gets a little bit nervous. So I think trying to find that comfort in the first few dives will be really important, and then just trying to get through into the final is going to be really important, and that's when you can really start to attack things.
And we're underway with Tilly Brown's first dive in 1.5 somersaults in the pike position.
Beautiful dive, beautiful form through the water, great entry, loved it.
I mean, it's like you said, Ross, it's a steady start. It's probably a good dive to open up your competition with. I assume Tilly would have been pretty confident to have done that one well, and she has done.
Up next, we've got Amy with the front 2.5 pike. That's a really nice dive from Amy. I've been watching Amy all week training, and she is so very powerful. I've been so impressed with her training.
It looks like we might have slightly missed some of Amy's dive there, but this is the complication with having so many 1 meter springboards. The cameramen don't know where to look. It can be a challenge. But yeah, you're certainly right. She's very strong, and I was really impressed with Amy at the Futures Cup that we just had 2 weeks ago in Plymouth.
Absolutely. Up next, we've got Grace with the back 1.5 pike. That's a beautiful dive. Absolutely love that. Grace is a veteran now in this sport, and she is looking fantastic at the moment. She's got that beautiful form. She has a great rip, and I think first dive, back 1.5 pike for 7 halves, she'll be very happy with that.
She will. And Grace has had a lot of success on 1 meter as well, hasn't she?
Oh, absolutely. She's reigning Commonwealth bronze medalist, so I'm sure she'll be looking to maybe go up a couple later on in the year in Birmingham. Up next, we have Rochelle with the inward 1.5 pike, and again, that's a beautiful dive. Great save through the water. She really takes all of the splash down with her. Beautiful rip entry.
She did, yeah. It was a clever finish. Perhaps she could have stayed over the board a little bit longer to get more height. Very
slightly. So obviously, when you're following someone like Grace, who is super powerful, it does highlight sometimes if you are a little bit lower. But you know, I train with Rochelle. She is a super strong diver. I think that's a beautiful dive. Up next, we've got Maya with another inward 1.5 pike.
And again, it's good. I think looking at the start lists, we can see a lot of inward 1.5 pikes.
You know, everybody does 5 directions, but it's still somewhat a tactical game when it comes to list order. So people are going to start with the ones that they're comfortable with. Normally, a forward entry facing dive is something that people find easy to do under pressure. So that's why you'll get a lot of inward 1.5 pikes on the first round. Evie Smith with the same dive. And again, these girls are on fire this morning. This is so consistent. Not one person's landed anywhere other than upright on these inward 1.5 pikes. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe the discrepancy you're seeing in the scores there compared to some of the others, just a bit of extra form, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
From Evie, just to really polish things off. But it was still there, wasn't it?
Absolutely. We've got Holly Waxman up next. Now diving out in the University of Utah in the US. And another great inward 1.5 pike.
Great 1.5 pike.
It's very, very marginally just back away from the board, so you'll see that reflected in the scores. But other than that, beautiful through the water, great form in the air.
She was underwater for ages then, Holly.
Wondered where she'd gone.
Yeah. A Lifeguards were getting nervous.
Got Brooke Ryan up next from Crystal Palace. I know the divers from Crystal Palace have had a bit of a rough time recently. Their pool is closed, so they've been moving around London, Southend, Luton, diving pools. Everyone trying their best to support them. And doesn't look like it's affected her too much there. Another great entry.
That's really difficult, isn't it, Ross? You've had that in Sheffield over a lot of the pandemic with the building being closed and having to travel to Leeds, and you lived in Edinburgh for a few weeks or months, didn't you, just to train?
It is really tough, I think, when we talk about training and how to get the best out of training. The word that always comes up is consistency, and when you don't have that because you don't have your home pool open, that's really tough to deal with. But you know, I've seen all of them training. They all look like they're doing a great job, and I hopefully for them their pool opens up as soon as possible.
Yeah, that was our first guest. So Elettra Neroni. So she is representing Italy. So we have quite a big team of Italian divers here. We've got 2 more Italian divers in this competition coming up, Elisa and Elena. And obviously for the men as well, there will be some Italian divers as well.
Also got Claire Cryan coming up soon for Team Ireland, so that's another guest in the mix. That's a great dive there from Calais, a forward 1-off somersaults, 1 twist. Beautiful hurdle, looks so rhythmic. I really like that.
I sometimes wonder if, because most of the people are choosing the same dive, do you give yourself an advantage by doing something different? Do you give yourself the potential to stand out more, or could it even go the opposite way?
Yeah, I would say that when, you know, the judges are human, they probably at some point in the competition are going to get a bit bored of seeing the same dive one after another, and there's so much more comparison there, whereas if you're the only person doing that dive, that could be to your advantage. And that, however, having said that, was a beautiful inward run-off pike from Holly there. Holly Prasanto from Sheffield. She's also out in the US at Rutgers University in New Jersey, studying on an athletic scholarship.
A lot of, particularly the women now in British diving are choosing to go down that route, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, especially female diving in America, especially as well as diving in America in general, is looking really strong. It's a really good place to go, and if you want to go and study as well, then I think you're really good to go and do that. It's a really good idea to go and do that.
That's from Katie Burton for Leeds. That's the first miss we've
seen.
Just
very slightly short of vertical. I actually really like the start. I think maybe she felt fairly comfortable on that start and just put her feet out a little bit low to the water, and that's why it just dropped a little short of vertical there.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe a bit too comfortable. And in that position, she could have reached back harder, try and save that finish. It's just kind of caught her shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next, we've got Elisa, our second Italian. Wow, beautiful dive. You'll notice on that one that she is reaching some height off that board. That is a really powerful dive. You can see her working her legs on that start. Just very, very slightly short of vertical on the end, just very slightly splashy. But other than that, fantastic dive.
And those are the sort of differences. I think especially for a 1 meter competition, we're seeing similar dives, and a lot of the dives we're seeing are just 1.5 somersaults in the women's event. So it's really, execution is really crucial.
Absolutely. There's very little discrepancy when it comes to difficulty over the list. So you're really looking for those extra halves, those extra 1 points there. And Claire from Ireland there doing a fantastic job with that in run-off pike. Beautiful entry. I'd say one of the sharpest entries we've seen today.
Yeah, for sure. Again, maybe Claire could have stayed on the board a bit longer just for that extra height for 7.5s or 8s, but it's a great dive, and that's Claire showing one of the things she's really competent at is her finishing and her lines.
Absolutely. Up next, we've got Yasmin, another diver training in Sheffield. Same dive. You'll be able to see on the right of the screen, Coach Tom Owens, getting that video analysis in for later. And a beautiful dive from Yaz. Very, very slight, small amount of splash thrown up just from her heels through the water. But again, another really powerful dive. Beautiful form in the air.
That one looked more just a bit more dynamic than maybe
Yeah,
some of the other ones.
I would
and
say
judges like
for
that.
me that looks effortless. It
Yeah.
looks like she's floating in the air.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like she's putting any effort in. She does the dive. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Got Elena Bertocchi up next for Italy. She is World 2017 bronze medalist on the 1 meter, as well as she's got gold, silver and bronze from European Championships over the last few years.
A competition favourite.
Absolutely. She drops that just slightly short of vertical
an
there, but
interesting
saved it really
entry,
well
yeah.
through the water.
Clever hands, clever work through the water. I wonder if she thought she was close.
I have a feeling, I think she thought she might be going over a little bit more than she was, and so went for the what we call a pike saving diving to try and really take all the water through with her. But she was just slightly short, and it's just backfired very slightly. Still a very consistent dive, 6.5. I don't think she'll be too disappointed with that. And we got Clara next, diving for Edinburgh. Moved from Aberdeen to Edinburgh to study medicine at university. There's a lot of very clever girls in this group.
And training full time, that's really difficult. It's a nice dive from Clara. It's probably slightly different to what you saw from Yasmin's. That looked not quite as effortless.
Yeah,
right?
I think you can see the effort that she's putting into the board a little bit more. But I know, again, I've seen her training and I've seen how much she's improved recently. That's Tilly Brown there with a forward 2.5 pike, just stepping back down off that hurdle, which makes the dive really difficult to do. I actually think she did a really good job of getting that round and saving that through the water. There's sometimes what you'll know when you step down in a hurdle and you go into panic mode. That's when things start to backfire, but I think actually she stayed really calm there. She's worked it round as well as she possibly could.
Amy Rowlandson.
Nice double twister for Amy. I think from the first two dives, she's just gone slightly over a vertical both times. I think she's just feeling the pump this morning.
Yeah. I find double twister, we call that, forward one off somersaults and 2 twists. It can be quite difficult because you don't want somersault speed, but to get the twist speed without the somersault speed can be a challenge, and I think that's what we saw there as a problem.
Yeah, definitely. It's very difficult to get that twist speed without getting the spin speed too. Grace there with a reverse 1.5 pike. Again, showing her class very slightly over a vertical. She's just caught her shoulders through the water, but again, 6.5. I don't think she'll be too disappointed with that. It's good, consistent diving. It's keeping her up there and in the mix.
And that's what you'll need to get through to the final.
Absolutely. You know, it's not always about who can do the best individual dives. It's who can be most consistent through the set. And there, showing that incredibly well, is Rochelle with the forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Again, a slightly lower degree of difficulty compared to the double twister, the 2 twist that we've seen from Amy earlier. But she's doing it really well. Great form and a lovely end. That's where doing the slightly lower degree of difficulty does really pay off. Maya up next with a front 2.5 pike. Really powerful. I have to say, I coached on one of the junior GB camps recently, and Maya was on there training, and fantastic trainer, super athletic. I think she'll be really someone that we need to watch in the future.
Yeah, well, I was impressed with Maya at the Futures Cup also.
Yes, absolutely.
She won the junior event.
Yeah, she did, yeah.
And yeah, it was certain dives very dynamic, but also everything was tidy and clean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sharp.
I know she'll have been working her consistency. I think that's something that she's struggled with in previous years. But from what I've seen in more recent months, she's doing really well with those sorts of things. Up next, we've got Evie, another front 2.5 pike. And a lovely dive from Evie there. Just very, very slightly loose through the water, so you don't see the best entry that we've seen all day, but a super consistent dive. Again, 6s. I don't think she'll be too disappointed with that. I'm sure if she gets through into the final later, she'll be aiming for those 7s. But 6s in the prelim in the morning, it's nice, steady diving. It's nothing to worry about. Holly Waxman there with the back 1.5 pike.
I mean, Ross, you mentioned earlier about people often liking to begin the competition with a forwards entry because they potentially find that easier. We might be witnessing that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. It is, for a back or reverse entry, it is really hard because you're going through the water blind. You can't see where you're going. Sometimes it's really hard to find where that upright position is. And especially in a competition when you've got the pressure, you might have a little bit more pump than normal, or you might be feeling so nervous that you don't have that normal pump that you have in training.
Yeah.
That's when that consistency through the back entry really comes into play, and I think we've probably seen that there for Brooke as well.
The same issue, but that was unfortunately quite short to vertical there for Brooke. Perhaps to dive a bit slow, still pushing the feet out a little bit too early, unfortunately.
Up next we've got Electra. Reverse 1.5 pike. So very
she's
nice.
Worked that round better.
Beautiful. I love the reach on the start. You can see her arms go up past her ears straight. Beautiful hand and finger form. That is where you will get the speed from. If you reach with bent arms, sometimes it's really hard to generate that speed. She's got beautiful straight arms, a beautiful line into the pike shape. She's just gone a little bit loose through the end, and that's why you don't see that perfect rip entry.
Callie Eagleston.
Fun fact about Callie, she moved to Leeds from Crystal Palace at 11. Her dad was actually the swim coach to Alex Yee, triathlon Olympic champion.
Ooh,
there you go.
I didn't know that.
Claim to fame right there. Nice dive there from Callie, just slightly over a vertical.
Holly Presanto. Forward 1.5 somersaults with 1 twist.
Again, opting for the slightly simpler twisting dive. Really nice again through the end. You can see she's getting the 7s there. She's got great form, lovely leg line, and she's got a great rip. And if you're doing that with the slightly simpler dives, that's where you're going to just keep yourself up at the top of the table.
She looks like she's developed, Holly. I haven't seen Holly dive in quite a while. In the US, their training style, certainly in the colleges, it's quite different to what we do.
Yeah,
here.
Absolutely. It's very much competition focused. They compete, almost every weekend, and I think you're really seeing that there with Holly's consistency.
Yeah.
Katie there with the reverse 1.5
I
pike.
did think that was a bit too close.
Yeah,
to the springboard.
to be fair, I wasn't sure whether it was our angle on the camera or
Yeah.
it was. I think the judges don't seem to have been too worried. Maybe Judge 6 there did think that hands were a little close to the end, but actually snuck it in really
Snuck it in
nicely.
well, yeah, she did. She held a nerve.
Elisa next with the forward 2.5 somersaults pike. It's not, again, it is so powerful.
Yeah, it was really back. Well, it was quite back on the springboard, which is a major disadvantage, but it didn't seem to make much impact. She still pushed the board down really well. The dive was comfortable. Maybe she was overcompensating, and that's why it's over-rotated.
I think so. I think it's so important to have that level of calm when you're on the board. So if you do get that hurdle that's a little bit away from the board, you can still push in, you can still go up, and you can still do the rest of your dive. And I think she had that. She just thought, probably having done that dive a million times in training, oh, normally when I'm back, I'm a little bit lower. I might need to hold on for a little bit longer there.
Great dive from Claire Cryan. Again, the forward 1.5 somersaults with 1 twist. High, clean. Claire
just moving the sprinklers
out
there.
the way.
So you can see those sprinklers in the water. That is just to break up the water surface so you can see where you're going to hit. If the water is too still, sometimes you can't actually see the surface. It's really hard to squeeze at the right time and get that perfect rip entry.
And those are probably in place there because we said that there's a lot of 1 meters here. The ones in the middle weren't always there, were they?
No, they weren't. They are a new addition to the pool. And a beautiful back 1.5 pike there.
It's good to see the aggression to drive. Even though this dive's easy, I'm gonna make it easy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's no holding back on that. Loads of attack, lots of height. She gets her feet out early at the water. That for me is what I love to see in all diving.
All diving.
Up next, we've got our veteran Italian, Elena. And there we go. That's what we've been looking for. That is a beautiful dive. It's up in the air. She is spinning fast. She looks like Sonic. Spinning so fast. Beautiful entry through the water. That's why you're going to see an 8 there from Judge 7.
It's just that slight step up in class.
Absolutely. Again, I think it's that level of comfort. She knows what she's doing. The judges feel comfortable watching it, and so they're going to reward her for that.
Yeah. I mean, particularly for a diver as experienced as Elena, ultimately, these are actually quite simple dives.
Yes, definitely. These 1 meter dives for her will be, she could probably knock through hundreds of those in training without even a little bit of sweat coming on her forehead.
No pressure, Elena.
Clara there with the back 1.5 pike.
And that was our final diver of round 2. So moving on to round 3 now. Tilly Brown, forward 1.5 somersaults now, but with 2 twists. And it was a better hurdle than the one before, but it was still back off the end. She's still a considerable distance, and that makes it difficult. I think then she's having to do the dive with her feet behind her. That causes lean. It's then hard to stop the dive.
Absolutely. It is for a twisting skill like that, where it's less somersaults than twists. That's where you really want that hurdle to send you up in the air, because any lean forwards is really, really hard to control through the twist and through the end as well. Amy Rollinson there with a Wonder Woman back 1.5 pike.
Oh, I love that.
She nearly hit her head on the ceiling.
No, really powerful. We saw the knee bend was considerable, but still pushed through all the way. There was a bit more entry left, maybe a bit more leg tension for wow scores.
Yes, yeah. I think if she does that later on in the final, I think she'll be getting a couple more points as well.
Oh yeah.
I think it's definitely a prelim this morning. You know, sometimes the judges are a little bit harsher in the mornings than when it gets to the finals later on.
That was Grace's forward 1.5 with 2 twists. Again, maybe a bit off the end of the springboard. I think Grace could probably benefit from a slightly quicker twist, because that means you can then finish the dive and get ready for the entry a bit sooner. But it's a difficult thing to do. Whoa!
And Rochelle Holden there with the reverse 1.5 pike. For me, that's one of the best dives we've seen all day. That is a beautiful entry. It's up in the air. Beautiful knee save. That's what we call the entry. So if you are about to go very slightly over, you bend your legs just as your knees go through the water, and it gives the illusion that you've landed upright, and she has finessed that.
Absolutely, she has.
Maya with the single twister. Again, opting for the slightly simpler of the twisting movements, but doing it really well, really consistently, sorry. I think for some of these girls, it's a great option to have that dive that they can go to that's maybe slightly down on DD, but super consistent and not something that they have to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, settles the nerves. Evie Smith's back 1.5 pike.
Very nice. Again, great, consistent. It's through the water really nicely. If we're being harsh, there's a little bit more form through the end, just a little bit more leg line, toe point, just so that the judges, really get that sense of like she knows what she's doing.
Yeah. Ooh, nice.
Ooh, lovely. Holly Waxman up next.
Nice dive.
Great reverse 1.5 pike from Holly. Again, a really powerful dive. She's up in the air, leaves her feet quite nice and low, and still floats it round to a lovely upright position.
I would describe that dive as just smooth. The whole thing, it just looked controlled, calm, bish bash bosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a better comeback for
with
Brooke.
the same dive. That is so much better. I think she's really learned from what she did on her last round and made sure she's not making that mistake again. She put her feet slightly higher there and more in a dished position, and then it holds better. If you come out of your pike shape and you go into an extension too early, that's when your rotation sort of dies through the end, and that's when you get those ones that land quite short.
Yep.
She's come out there, she's pointed her feet right up at the ceiling and in a lovely dish position, and she's held the end really well.
So this is Electra's twist dive, but this is a different twist option. This is reverse 1.5 twists.
And we've seen our first bulk of the morning.
Yep.
So
And I think that's particularly challenging on this specific dive.
absolutely,
To take it from where she was.
it's a very hard dive to go from if you are too far over the end of the board, because you've got to pick your legs up and send them back over your head and twist towards the board. It is really difficult, and she's just struggled with that a little bit through the end there.
So just for clarification, Ross, what happens now? What are we seeing for the scores?
So the judges will mark the dive out of 10 as normal, and then from every judge there will be a 2-point deduction, and that will be timed by the DD as normal to
So we
come up with
actually
your
saw her
dive score.
scoring 2s there, effectively.
Yes.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for Electra, but she's just got to bounce back.
Yeah, she had 2 strong dives to start with, so. Great dive there from Callie.
Yeah, really nice.
I have to say, I've been really impressed with her reverse actions all year. I've seen her put in reverse 1.5 pike on 1 meter and reverse 1.5 pike on 3 meter.
Back and reverse in a pike shape seems to be something that Callie is able to
Definitely,
to motor around.
She's very, very comfortable with that
Yeah.
position. She's very strong in her abs. So every time she hits the end of the board, her feet fire over her head. I don't even think she has to think about it. They just do it now. Holly there, diving for Sheffield. Front 2.5 pike, just falling slightly over vertical. But again, it's so powerful. You can really see how much she's benefited from going over to the States and getting lots and lots of competition experience. You know,
Lots of
they really
experience,
do
yeah.
compete
Yeah.
almost every other weekend. So you can imagine how many more competitions she's done than the people that are living and diving in the UK.
Yeah.
It's a really good opportunity for some people. And there, Katie Burton with the same dive, really well executed.
Yeah, she snuck that one in. She did well to keep fighting, keep working, and she got a good entry. Ideally, I think Katie would want a little bit more space on the dive to take the scores to a higher level.
Yeah, I think if you compare that to Holly's previously, Holly
Yeah.
just has that little bit more zip on the start, and you can she just looks a little bit. It looks a little bit easier through the dive. That one just looks a little bit laboured towards the end, but she held onto her shape really well. She gets her hips over on the end, and she goes in upright with a really nice entry. I think she'll be really pleased with that one.
Well, Alida just trying her best to knee save that dive as hard as possible to try and stop it from over-rotating as much, or at least give the appearance that it was a bit too much for her to work with, so she's just gone a bit too far past vertical to be able to bring that dive back. But again, I enjoy seeing Elisa's work on the springboard. She's like a very natural springboard diver.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah, it does look natural to her. It looks so comfortable. She looks super calm on the board. It's lovely to see. Up next, we've got Claire with another back 1.5 pike. Claire currently studying for a master's in physiotherapy at Sheffield Hallam University.
Ooh.
And still getting the training in and
Oh,
doing
yeah.
a fantastic job on that back 1.5 pike. Again, as we said previously, her entries
Yeah.
really are fantastic. I would say that maybe that's a little bit harsh from my angle. I would have said at least a 6.5 at the very least. I would have probably put that up at a 7 personally.
I think I'd be with you there, Ross. It's sometimes like this, perhaps from our angle, or even we just don't know. But we mentioned already the judges, and because I think even more so because this is a 1 meter competition, the judges are less likely to really go with a dive. Whoa, Yasmin!
Wow, hey!
Whoa.
Yasmin Harper has come to play this morning.
I think. Well, I hope people can see the difference in height and speed, somersault speed, that Yasmin's showing. That I think certainly the judges can. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for anyone that's not so familiar with diving, if you look out for where people point their feet out of the shapes, then you will sort of figure out how high they are. If they can point their feet down at the water and still go in upright, then they are probably most likely very, very high or very fast.
All very fast.
Or very, very
Or both.
fast. Or both. And she has done a great job there. She is high, she is fast, and she gets her feet right out of the water. And Elena has backed that up with another incredible back 1/2 pike.
I would say that that height isn't Elena's strongest attribute, say in comparison to a diver like Yasmin, but her class, her consistency, her entries, the kind of finesse of a dive, that's really where
absolutely.
she gets the
I
points
think
in.
it's really clear to see that Elena has her own style of diving,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very nice, and that's why she's been so successful. Clara there with a reverse 1/2 tuck, just
Fighting
going
that again.
slightly short of vertical. I think she's landed just slightly with her toes over the end, and definitely her body weight forward, which again is a really tough position to go
It
from.
is. It's like we were saying with Electra. If you're doing a forwards dive there, it's not ideal, but it's easier because you're somersaulting in a direction in which your feet are over the board. But to hold on to the dive on a reverse spinning dive when your toes are like that is a real challenge.
Absolutely. Tilly there with a beautiful back 1/2 pike. Very, very slightly bent legs in the pike shape, but I think that's me being quite very harsh.
Yeah, but I mean, I noticed that as well.
That
You know,
that
those-
will
this-
be just where the judges aren't giving the 7s or the 7.5s, because the entry is beautiful and the form through the end was really nice. Just in that shape, she's just losing it a little bit. We've got the reverse 2.5 now for Amy.
Big dive.
Big dive, biggest dive of this competition. And she has
Yeah,
put
well
it in
done.
upright on her head. That is a fantastic dive there
Well
from Amy.
done, Amy. That's a hard dive, and Amy is the only athlete doing that dive in this competition. One of the big challenges with 1 meter is there's such a difference in difficulty, in actual physical difficulty between, say, a 1.5 somersault and a 2.5. So to make the step up to doing 2.5 somersaults, not forwards, but in the other directions, it's a big step.
Absolutely.
And Amy's taking it on, and she's doing a good job. But so is Grace Reed with an in 1.5 pike. I just like watching.
Again,
Grace
like
on
I
1
said about
meter.
Elena earlier, Grace also has her own style of diving.
Yeah.
And it's so nice, it's so powerful. She has beautiful form on everything.
Yeah.
And that is really reflected in the marks that she gets from the judges. Rochelle there with a back 1.5 pike. She's just pushed her feet out a little bit too early there,
Yeah.
and just caught her shoulders through the water, so she ends up a little short of vertical, and that's where you get those 4.5s and 5s.
And that was Rochelle's first slip up. Really, she's done really well until now. It'll be interesting to see where the scores are at, because I imagine that she was well up there prior to that dive. It's not a huge miss, but only 8
Yes, I believe
divers
so.
go through to the final, and we've got 17 divers in this event, so it's going to be tight and it's going to be difficult, and particularly in a 1 meter event, I think we'll see compact scores.
Yes, absolutely. I think, again, consistency is key, and it wasn't a major drop, but she will be wanting to really turn it on for the next couple of dives. Maya there with a beautiful back 1.5 pike, just very slightly over a vertical through the end. But other than that, beautiful form, great power on the start.
Evie Smith, reverse 1.5 somersaults, pike position.
And she's done a really great job of that end. You can just see her slightly pushing behind her as she leaves the board, so she does move out into the middle of the pool very slightly, but she did put her magic gloves on and get a fantastic entry through the water there.
Yeah, that's one of the big battles in diving, is distance from the diving board.
Absolutely, you don't want it to be too much, and you definitely don't want it to be too little.
Yeah.
A great dive there, though, for Holly. No
really
problem
nicely
with
done.
the distance department in that. lovely start up through the roof. Great shapes, great form, just very slightly over vertical.
And Brooke Ryan with the same dive for 2.5 somersaults in the pike position.
She's done a good job of that.
Yeah, I think she'll be pleased.
I
Brooke.
think, after having that little drop earlier, it's always really hard to come back from. But
Yeah.
you know, she's been diving consistently since that round 2 drop, and I think she'll be, you know, so it's really hard sometimes when you do that drop, especially in the first couple of rounds, because you know you've got another 3 or 4 dives to go, and sometimes that's really difficult mentally. And she seems to have really managed to switch on there and stay with it, and she's doing a great job.
It's a bit of a miss, sorry, from Electra again. She looked good in the air, lifting her chest. I mean, by no means a terrible dive, but I think it had high scores written all over that. She just caught
absolutely.
her chest on the water.
I think after that restart on the
Yeah.
reverse twist last time, I think probably she's gone into that a little bit nervy.
Yeah.
She did, however, get a fantastic hurdle. I wonder if she surprised herself and then has come out a little bit early through the water there. Callie just over-rotating just slightly on that forward 2.5 pike. Again, it's high and it's fast and she's got great form. She just dips her head in through the water and it just the rotation just keeps going.
You always wonder if people are getting takeoffs that they're not quite ready for. In competition, the adrenaline is firing, and you definitely take, I don't know, a 5-10% step up in power. It's certainly how I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, sometimes, like we said, those nerves can be really good for you, and they do give you that extra boost. And sometimes if you've not had that in training, it's really hard to find the consistent ends. Doesn't seem to be a problem for Holly though, with the back 1.5 pike there. Again, super consistent the whole way through this list.
Just there's a bit more finesse or tidiness just on the entry, maybe through her leg line, but she's just exactly where she needs to be. The takeoff's good, the come out is spot on. It's impressive from Holly.
Yeah, I've been so impressed to see. You know, she only came back from the US, I think, last week, and I've been watching her in training. She's been looking great, and another great dive there from Katie. Single twister, the forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Again, opting for the slightly easier of the twisting groups, the twisting dives, sorry. But really, really executing that very, very well indeed.
You know, and we'll see if some of these choices pay off, you know, for who makes it through to the final.
Absolutely. We've got another reverse twist now. Reverse 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist from the Italian.
That's the hurdle you want.
Absolutely.
Maybe just a little bit slow in the somersault speed. It was a tiny bit stuck, but she's exactly where she wants to be on the springboard, and that's nice to see.
I think sometimes when you get the great hurdles in competitions, you sometimes can take your foot off the gas in terms of the speed.
Yeah.
So you hit the end of the board, you think, yes, what a great hurdle, and you sort of forget to add the speed in, and I think maybe she hit the board there. Fantastic, fantastic rhythm, beautiful jump, and just didn't quite get the speed up through her legs. Claire Cryer next with the reverse 1.5 somersaults piked.
Nice, Claire.
Again, very, very consistent, really great through the end. I think she's moved out into the middle of the pool very, very slightly, and that's why you'll be getting the 6s and 6.5s rather than the 7s and the 7.5s. But again, consistency is key. She's there, she's landing upright with a great entry. It's great to see.
So Yasmin doing the reverse twist option as well. So that's 1.5 somersaults and 1.5 twists. Eliza setting the benchmark a couple of dives ago.
And another great dive from Yaz. She's been fantastic this morning, super consistent.
A standout performer for sure.
You'll see the 6.5s there, just very, very slightly over a vertical. She just catches a bum as she does the pike save through the water. But again, she does take the water down with her. She has a great rip entry, and that's why even the slight drop takes it to a 6.5 rather than any lower. Wow.
And that's just exactly what Elena does again, isn't it? She's just absolutely bang on with a good entry, good rip, good finish, no splash, tidy. It's so hard to beat. Looking at her score, Ross, she's on 204 total now. I think that's kind of a benchmark for women's 1 meter 50 points a dive, particularly in a preliminary round where it's harder to get scores from the judges. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah,
looking
absolutely.
for,
I think the ladies will be super happy if they go 50 points a dive in the prelims, and maybe they'll be wanting to push that up to 55 to 60 points in the final.
Yeah.
But I think she'll be really happy with where she's at there.
And that was, again, Clara, our final dive of round 4. So just one more round of dives now. Just looking at the standings, things are very close indeed. As we expected. Tilly Brown's final dive, reverse 1 off somersaults in the pike position. Looks like not her most comfortable dive.
Yeah, I would say as she leaves the board there, she doesn't look at her most comfortable. She reaches into that pike shape just with slightly crimped knees, and that is reflected in the scores.
And I think, as I say, looking at the scores as we predicted, it's going to be a battle now for divers like Holly Waxman, Evie Smith, Rochelle. They're just sitting in 9th, 10th and 11th. Even Callie to try and get themselves into the final.
Absolutely, it's very, very tight at the moment. That's a beautiful dive there from Amy. She's, I think, saved her best till last there.
Yeah, definitely. And she'll, after the reverse 2.5 and that going well, there's probably a slight sigh of relief, but then also, right, okay, now using that adrenaline, feeling good, feeling strong.
Absolutely.
In a great final
I
dive.
think when you've got the difficulty, the DD there in that reverse 2.5, you can afford to have a drop towards the start because you've got the DD to bring it back. And I think maybe having done that, that's just given her a little bit more comfort going to that final dive. And Grace has responded very well indeed with her front 2.5 pike. Again, it's just beautiful diving. It's so high, the form is lovely.
It is. It's a great dive from Grace. She would have wanted a little bit more on her twist dive, but it shows her class. She still finished on that 50-point a dive mark, 250 points overall. That's obviously
I think
Grace
she'll be very pleased with that this morning. Rochelle there, you'll see a step down just slightly to the right of the board there. That's such a shame. She's been so consistent through these dives.
Yeah, and the end of the springboard it's not wide at all, isn't it? It's probably only a foot or so wide, so there's not much margin for error, and that's a sort of springboard diver's curse, to feel yourself drifting to one side.
Oh, that's a nice dive from Maya. Beautiful start there. Great pickup into the shape, and I love the dish out with her toes. She's just slightly pulled it with her chest. I think maybe she didn't realise how high she was, and she's gone to reach her arms back as fast as she can, and actually she could have held it for a little bit. Up next, we've got Evie Smith from Crystal Palace.
Similar mistake to Rochelle.
Very, very similar hurdle. And actually, I'm sure she's glad she's had that slight mistake on the hurdle on that dive, because that's where, if you do have the slightly lower degree of difficulty dives, you can go from those slightly uncomfortable positions, and she's done that really well. She's finished upright with a nice rip. I think actually she'll be pretty happy with that save.
And Holly Waxman's final dive, also the reverse twist option, 1 off somersaults, 1.5 twists. Good job.
It's a great dive. It's very, very slightly what I like to call fluffy on the end. It doesn't have quite that sharpness going through the water. But again, another one of the divers that's moved to University of Utah in the US. She's studying medicine. It's fantastic to see that she's also carrying on diving and doing it at such a high level. I know she qualified in her freshman year, her first year of college, for NCAAs on all 3 boards, which is a pretty phenomenal achievement.
Well, that really is the standard in the NCAAs. It's very high.
Very high indeed. And Brooke there from Crystal Palace finishing up with a forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Again, I think after that second round drop for Brooke, she's been fairly consistent there. It's not the highest dive and it's not the fastest dive, but she's landing upright. She's got great form through her dives. I think she'll be really pleased with that.
Yeah, I think so. looking at the scores now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think it's going to be difficult for Holly. She's done well, but she's still sitting behind Rochelle, so it's going to make that chance for a final quite difficult, I think.
Quite difficult. We do have to take into account that we do have guests, so I believe it's only 2 guests will go through to the final if they are in the top 8. So we could be counting back to 10th place, possibly.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good point, actually, Ross. So that might actually give Holly a good chance of being in. I think she certainly deserves it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's competition, isn't it?
Up next, we've got Callie with the inward 1/2 pike. And that's a beautiful dive. And so, as we said at the start, a lot of people start with this dive, but it's also a great dive to finish on because you always want to finish strong, don't you? It's hard to have a dive last that you're not so comfortable with. So to have a dive like an inward 1/2 pike that she knows she can slot in on her head and bring home easy points, I think that's really good tactical work from her there.
Is that a format that you follow for your lists, Ross?
I've tried many different things, to be fair. It's definitely something that I use for a long time, of making sure that no matter how the competition had gone, finishing on a dive that I knew I could do, and if the competition had gone really well, then I can use it, and if it hadn't, then I know I can still do it. And that's so disappointing there for Holly. Just the reverse on our pike, she presses her feet out a little too early.
Very, very high. I think, yeah, if she didn't have loads of somersault speed, not an issue, she's very high, but the legs needed to press kind of 45 degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. She just needed to, I think, Holly's struggled with reverse in the past, and I think in a way, sometimes when you've struggled with something in training in the past, that comes out in competition, even if it's been going well, because it is still that worry still plays on your mind sometimes.
You can revert with the nerves. You can revert back to old habits, bad habits potentially,
Absolutely.
and that's why it's so difficult. And
Katie there with a great inward 1/2 pike, again 6.5. I think she'll be really happy with her list today. She's been very, very consistent, just slight drops every now and again, but no big dramas, as we'd like to call them.
yeah.
Wow, Eliza there.
She's impressed me.
So
Eliza.
powerful. She has. Well, I'm not sure if you can hear it on the live stream, but we can hear here that her board timing is immaculate. You hardly hear the board bend.
Yeah. Whereas when I was diving, just bang,
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 bang, bang.
dong.
No, Freddie,
Unfortunately.
that's not
I don't
true.
have to worry
I can
about that
confirm that's not true. Freddie was very good with the board timing too. Claire up next with her final dive, the forward 2.5 somersaults piked. Wow!
Oh, yes, Claire.
That is
That's a
sky
finish.
high. That is
So
a
easy.
beautiful dive. I'm so pleased for Claire. I know, I've seen her train. I train with her every day. It's so difficult to manage your studies and your training and doing all of that at the same time and doing everything with great quality. And I think that is just a reflection of how much work she's put in over the last few months.
Definitely. That was the dive, or one of the dives of the competition, for
Yeah,
sure.
I would agree. Yasmin with the same dive, and it's sky high. She's just slightly missed her end there, just gone slightly over vertical, just lifted her chest through the water, which is why you get that slightly splashy entry. But having said that, again, 2.54, no dramas, and still somewhere to go in the final. I think that's always nice to have, something else left to go for in the afternoon.
If you dive your heart out in the prelim, it's sometimes a disadvantage to be in.
And Elena there with the reverse 1.5 twister. A very nice dive. I wouldn't say that's Elena's usual entry.
No, I would agree. I think just, a slightly shorter vertical, catching the chest. She'd want a better finish, but again, she's, absolutely bang on, and I think that's going to be our competition winner by the looks of things.
And on to our final diver of the women's 1 meter prelim. We've got Clara with the back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist. Actually, the first time we've seen this dive today.
It is.
I do like a bit of variety.
Yeah, it's hard to see everyone else doing that with a hurdle step or some of the other athletes. So it can be more difficult to do it without the extra height, but of course standing backwards helps the rotation.
Yeah, it is one of those that physically is actually slightly harder, but technically slightly easier than the reverse twist. So, you know, if you are someone that is physically very capable, that one might be the one for you. And if you are someone that technically is very capable, then the reverse twist might be your choice. Yeah,
it's that balance. But that does conclude our women's 1 meter preliminary round. So that is finished. You can see the men. They're just preparing now. So very, very shortly we'll have the men's competition. Obviously the guys are just entitled for 5-minute or couple-minute warm-up. They've obviously just been waiting around whilst the women have been competing. So they're just getting that chance to get in the water, freshen up, use the springboard, get used to the springboard just to feel absolutely focused. We will get the results to you shortly when they come up. Ross, your thoughts on that event?
I am very, very impressed. For a morning event, for a 1 meter prelim, I think that is one of the most consistent prelims I've seen in a long time. And here we have the results.
Yep. So so we have to bear in mind, this is obviously the top 8, but we have to bear in mind that actually in this we have 3 guests, actually. So obviously our guest from Italy, Elena Bertocchi, leading the preliminary round. Yasmin Harper in 2nd place. So we have the top 3 all going over 250. That's Grace, Yasmin and Elena. And then in 4th place, Claire Cryan, 238. 5th place, Amy Rowlandson. Very impressed by her
really
again.
Well recovered after that, a couple of the first 2 rounds. I'm sure she wouldn't have been particularly pleased with those, but again, it's about carrying on going the whole way through.
Absolutely. I think Claire, Grace, Yasmin and Elena will be nervous about Amy, seeing the list of dives that she has and the capability she has. She's certainly one to watch, and only half a point behind Claire. We also have Elisa Pizzini from Italy, 224.8. 7th place, Maya Cutti, 220.75. And 8th place, Rochelle Holden, 214.9. So, and then obviously the next slate, 9th place, Holly Waxman, 211.45. And then Evie Smith, 210.65. Holly Prasanto, 208.7. But without having official confirmation, as we understand it, Ross, we expect Holly, Evie and Holly to be in the final.
Yes, I think so. So because there are 3 guests ahead of them, and the top 8 Brits will go through to the final. So I believe that we will have both Hollies and an Evie.
Yeah, and Clara there just in 17th place. Overall, that was a really, really, really good performance from most of the women. Some nerves there. The dreaded hurdle step in springboard diving causing some problems, as it always does.
As always.
And that's definitely something that's always a challenge, and particularly the men now pushing the boundaries of degree of difficulty. We'll see some big dives on this. Well, that's actually Olympic champion, diving legend Jack Law on the springboard now. You can see how strong he is. But also on the adjacent springboard, James Heatley, phenomenal diver who's really, really pushing the potential, pushing the springboard really well. He's been doing excellently.
I'm very excited for this men's 1 meter event. I think we're going to see some fantastic dives.
Yeah, so we'll let the guys warm up a little bit. We'll take a short break, and then we'll be back for the men's 1 meter prelim. So make sure you join us for that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India, and our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements, because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great value plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free.
Buy now at labara.co.uk.
Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India. And our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great value plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free.
Buy now at labara.co.uk.
Welcome back, everyone, or if you are just joining us, welcome. Freddie Woodard and Ross Haslam will give you a little wave.
Hello.
In the commentary box at the British Diving National Championships 2022. We are here at Ponds Forge in Sheffield. We saw earlier the women's 1 meter preliminary competition, and now, in any moment's time, we have the men's 1 meter competition. We saw some fantastic diving from the women, and now the men are ready to go. I think one thing that stands out, Ross, is the difficulty of the dives we are seeing from pretty much everyone in this competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really do have people pushing the boundaries of what is physically capable to do off a 1 meter springboard in this event. I mean, we've got front 3.5 pikes, we've got inward 2.5 pikes, we've got reverse 2.5 pikes. It's really quite insane how much 1 meter diving, to say it's not an Olympic event,
Yeah.
people are still going in there and really pushing themselves physically to, well, really see what they can get out of it.
Exactly. Obviously, as you're seeing on the screens, we have the start list for you there. That's the first 8 divers. You might notice also that, like the women's event, we have some guests. Obviously, Yona Night Wisdom for Jamaica. We have Francesco Porco, he's an Italian diver also. So we have a few guests in this one too. So the top 8 from this competition will make it through to the final, but of course that is the top 8 from Great Britain. And obviously we can allow 2 guests into the final if they are within the highest 8 finishes.
Absolutely. I mean, look at this start list. 1, 2, and 3. Olympian, Olympic, gold, silver, and bronze medalist. That's just the first 3 divers of the event.
Yeah, world medalist, Olympic medalist. Yeah, and then again, looking down the list, we've seen over the years some stuff from Francesco Porco and the ability that he has.
Yeah, we've got Jordan Holden, he's European medalist. Leon Baker just coming off the back of the Futures Cup win just, a couple of weeks ago?
And as a
with
junior,
some fantastic dives.
An awesome score. But yeah, we are into some really, really big dives, and James Heatley is starting this competition with a forward 2.5 somersaults with 1 twist. That's a lot of dive to stick in from a 1 meter springboard. But you'll see any moment now, for a man of James's capability, it's no problem.
He is so strong, we know that already. He has the form and the rip as well to add to that. And I think, no, I don't want to commentate a curse on him right now, but I think you'll see the power that James Heatley has, in particular on the 1 meter board. He is so powerful. I am really, really excited for this event, for everyone, but in particular to see James and Jack and Jordan, these fantastic dives. And that is exactly what we are talking about.
Man.
You can see as he steps down from his hurdle, his feet slam into the water. He is bending that board the whole way down to the water. We like to call that a dunk or a darily dunker, as I like to say. That is a fantastic pull out, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist. He's made it look so easy.
So easy. And actually what's so impressive is the quality of the hurdle step. First dive, first competition, no nerves, just perfect hurdle. That's awesome composure.
Absolutely. We've got Yona for Jamaica here with the reverse 2.5 somersaults pike. And again, reverse 2.5 1.5 somersault, 2.5 twist, and it is beautiful. It's so high. Again, dunking his feet into the board. The edge of that board slams straight into the water. He goes sky high through the roof, and a beautiful entry.
It's a disadvantage for Yona, really, because the board would go half a metre further, but if the water didn't stop it.
Absolutely. You'll see on the side of the boards we have something called the fulcrum, which is a wheel that we put up and down, so it's numbers 1 to 9, and I know that for a lot of people, they'll have the board on a 9. That means that the board will bend to its max. And Yona has to have that on a 7, otherwise he ends up in the water with his full leg. And Jack Law showing his absolute class there with the back 2.5 somersaults tucked.
Really, really beautifully done. I mean, yeah, as a start list, as a 1, 2, 3 already, James, Yona, Jack, that's a really strong way to start the event. And Jack's performed a really difficult dive, actually. A back 2.5 is hard,
it's
isn't it?
so hard. For a DD of 3.0, it's, I would say, one of the hardest dives to do for that DD. I always say it should be at least a 3.3.
I'm right with you there. Maybe not for Jack, but for everyone else.
Yeah, for everyone else, he makes it look so easy. We've got Connor up next. Connor will be heading to the Junior Europeans in Bucharest in Romania in July. Lovely dive from him there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It is a challenge for a diver like Connor to be up against the start list that he has here today in his competition. But also, I think that's good experience, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To dive against the absolute best in the world, really. You
will see that comparison where you see some of the older, the bigger divers going super high. That's going to be really hard for Connor as, just a Group B kid. But actually, I would say he'd be very happy with that. And again, Francesco Porco, I think he will be really happy with that. We've seen some real class from him over the years. He's a great diver. That's lovely through the end. Just missing a little bit of the form through the feet, and that's why you're getting the 7s to count rather than the 7.5s and 8s.
Jake Passmore, this is another guest for Ireland this time. Inward 1.5 somersaults in the pike position.
And that's a beautiful dive there from Jake. He is another one of those divers that's so powerful, so strong, gifted physically. It's so high, but also has the form to back that up as well. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll see that throughout this competition. I know he won the Junior Elite 1 meter competition earlier on in the year, and I think he'll be here and ready to do that again here. Oh, yeah. Up next, we've got Sheffield boy Jordan with the inward 2.5 somersaults pike, starting with a 3.4 difficulty and executing it pretty well. He's just come out of that somersault just fractionally too early, and that's why it drops a touch short.
I'd want to see him continue to work, because there's no reason why that dive can't go massive, because it's easy, but it's actually quite casual.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because he is so powerful and he makes his dives so easily, sometimes the challenge comes in not over-rotating, and I think on that he's just gone a little bit too short. He just didn't want to dip it too far over. That's a class dive there from Leon, the forward 2.5 somersaults pike. He's looking fantastic, isn't he?
He is. I mean, that's the simplest dive in his list. But if you're going to do a dive like that, that's the way you want to do it, and the difficulty of his dives will progress as the round goes on. It's sometimes hard to find that sixth dive on 1 meter, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know I've used a front 2.5 pike for a long time, because even though it's slightly simpler, it is so easy to bank as your first dive. So it's worth using to get into the event. And that's a nice inward 1.5 pike there from Oscar. Oscar will also be heading to the Junior European Diving Championships, along with Connor and Leon later on in the year. It's just slightly short of vertical there through the water, and that's why you're going for the 6.5s rather than the 7s. But again, these are the junior boys, and they're getting a 6.5 at a senior event because they are so powerful. They've got such great form, and they can show it off so well. It's so great to see. We've got Robbie Lee there with a back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist. Usually up there on the 10 meter.
Yeah,
today
that's
on
his
1
preferred
meter
board, isn't it? And he showed what he was really capable of at the Junior Elites, and I mean he performed at the Futures Cup as well. a lot of power, and you can see that actually speed is something that he has in abundance, even on the 1 meter springboard.
Absolutely. We've got Romano Wang up next. That's a lovely forward 2.5 somersaults pike there. That's a beautiful, sharp entry. When we say our rip entry, it's because it sounds like the tearing of paper when you go through the water, and that, I can tell you, I'm not sure if you can hear it as well on the feed, but in real life, I can hear that sharpness through the water.
Yeah.
It's so lovely.
Again, just when you're up against some of the guys like we have in this event, when you're as a junior, if you're not going quite as high, you're going to fall short of some of the scores that they're getting just because of how high they are.
Absolutely, it does come down to that comparison, doesn't it? And if you are against, your Olympic champions, your world medalists, the difference in the height and the spin speed and the time that you have through the water, you are going to get those half point to a point lower, but I think I'd be really happy with that. Tyler's just gone slightly over a vertical there on the inward 2.5. As he takes off, he dips his chin just slightly down, and then it's really, really hard to have that awareness through the water.
Yeah.
If you can't see the water, it's really hard to come out and land upright. Just got to keep that chin slightly higher, and that will give him that awareness through the end. Up next, we've got our second of the Italians, Lorenzo, with an inward 2.5 tuck.
Really
Wow.
nice. It's Lorenzo's somersault speed which stands out in particular. Perhaps not as high as maybe some of the other guys go, but his somersault turnover is one of the fastest by a mile. A really clever finish. That's a really great way for him to start his event. And his teammate and synchro partner, Giovanni, also starting with a forward 2.5 somersaults in the pike position.
And how classy is that? That's why Giovanni is the world bronze medalist from 2017. He's been to Tokyo, he's been to Rio, he's European Championship silver medalist in 2016 and 2018, and a bronze medalist in 2021. You can see that in the class of his dives. His form is beautiful, he's so powerful, and his entries are immaculate.
When it goes right for Giovanni, it's a particularly special looking dive, I think.
Outstanding. Got Todd there with the inward 1.5 pike. A really nice dive, dropping just very slightly short of vertical. I don't think he'll be too disappointed with that as his first dive. I know he'll be aiming more towards the 7s there, but again, first dive, an inward 1.5 pike. Like we said in the women's event earlier, it's a nice dive to start on. You can finish the end. I think he'll be okay with that start.
Yeah, I think so too. That does bring us round now into round 2. Our first diver, James. His second twist dive, this time the reverse 1.5 somersaults with 2.5 twists.
James is the reigning 1 meter bronze medalist from the 2018 Commonwealth Games, so I'm sure he'll be looking to try and one-up that this summer in Birmingham.
It's another perfect hurdle, and he's so high on the board. That makes it even more difficult to control. But there's no issue of that for James so far, and actually overall he's really impressed me with that. The dive itself was great, a hair short, maybe
just fractionally short of vertical, but like you said, it's hard to put into perspective how hard these hurdles are. It's something that divers do from their first couple of years of diving, and I'm not sure I've ever met someone who has completely perfected a hurdle. They are so difficult to do.
Yeah.
The board moves so much, and you've got to try and stay nice and central in it. So hard. And Yona there opting for the back 2.5 somersaults tuck. Again, that's just crazy to see, and he can't get out of the pool.
Yona.
He
can do a back 2.5.
Back 2.5, he can't get out of the pool. But it's so good. It's so easy. I have to say, I am very, very jealous.
Yeah, because you're doing it standing, and because he's so tall, like to get out of his shape and to be fully extended through the water on that dive, so hard. But he did it. Awesome.
And that's a restart for Jack there. I'm not used to seeing that for Jack. He's got the reverse 2.5 somersaults pipe.
This is a very difficult dive to do on the 1 meter springboard. Again, for someone like Jack, it's not that difficult because he's so strong.
And again, not a fantastic hurdle. You can really hear the miss time there, but showing his class, showing how easy that dive is for him. It flies round. He has a great entry, and that's why you're getting 7s from the judges, which will read to 5s with the 2-point deduction.
Yeah, that's it. There's extra pressure to put the dive in once you've done a restart, and those kinds of things going through your mind. Obviously, Jack's been in the highest type of pressure situations that there can be in sport, really. So,
absolutely, he has that experience, I think, to cope with a small mishap like that. Up next, we've got Connor with the forward 2.5 somersaults piked. And that is a beautiful dive from Connor there. He's so high. I mean, Connor is one of the younger juniors in this. He's in Group B in the junior events, and
so
that makes
flying. Him 15.
Yeah, 14 to 15. Yeah, the Group B is 14, 15 years old. So, and he's doing that dive so well. And again, we were saying with the women earlier, that looks effortless for him. It doesn't look like he needs to try. And Francesco Porco there with the forward 2.5 somersaults 1 twist, this time opting for what we would call a full in rather than a full out. So he does the twist before he then makes the shape and does the somersault after that. It's very different, isn't it, that?
It is very different. It's obviously just people's different personal preferences. We'll see Jack Law do the full in, so the twist first, later in his list. I think for the majority of the guys, we'll see a full out. That's certainly what we did and do.
Absolutely, yeah. And Jake there with the back 2.5 somersaults tuck.
Again, this is back 2.5 somersaults tuck. Very difficult dive. Very hard to perform correctly. Jake was almost there. He's let his weight fall back a little bit, so he's not got all of the height that he would have liked to. If you stay over the board as long as possible and you ride the board for longer, you get that extra foot of height, let's say, and that's what Jake probably needed to really finish off the dive. But he's done well. Huge dive now.
And that is a fantastic dive there from Jordan. Another huge dive. I am sure that boy is filled with helium. He floats in the air. He leaves the board, he floats in the air, he finishes all 3.5 rotations, and then it's like he restarts time to go through the water. That is fantastic work there from Jordan.
Maybe it's a similar, I don't want to call it mistake, but similar choice of come out through his inward 2.5. He's come out of the shape very early, so he's got lots of time to grab his hands, but he ends up kind of rolling through the water in a slight pike shape. Why the scores weren't higher.
That's why you're not seeing, eights and a halves, but it's such a hard dive to do, and he makes it look so easy. Leon there with the inward 2.5 somersaults tuck. Actually a very nice dive, just very slightly fading away from the board there. His hips just go back, and then you struggle to really create the rotation or keep the rotation going through the end, and that's why it just falls short there.
Yeah, you sort of begin to chase, but the potential for him to make that dive is clearly very comfortable if he gets the right takeoff.
Oscar up next. Triple bronze and silver medalist at the Junior Elites earlier in the year. Lots of metalware to come home with him, and a beautiful back 1.5 pike there.
Oscar's development, obviously with me being from Sheffield, and that's where Oscar trains. I saw him train last week, just coming into the pool, and his technique, I would say, looks excellent. He's still developing, he'll continue to develop, but the technique that he possesses now and the quality that he has access to across all his dives, it has impressed me a lot.
Absolutely. completely agree with that. Robbie Lee there with the inward 2.5 somersaults tuck. A great dive. Again, just dipping slightly over a vertical through the end. Again, no dramas, no worries. I think he'll be okay with that dive. I know he'll be looking for a little bit more.
Yeah, he's doing a big set of dives, and as we mentioned, this isn't his preferred discipline. He prefers being up on the 10-meter platform. But it's all good experience. It's great to have him in the event.
Romano up next with the same dive. A really, really good work there from Romano. I know he's been struggling a little bit with this dive in the warm-up this morning. It's a lot of dive to fit in on 1 meter, and especially if you aren't someone that's, you know, a little bit older, maybe he's got a little bit more weight behind them. You have to use your legs so much to try and get that board to bend and send you up in the air. And I think he's done a really good job there. It's just a little bit lower than some of the other boys, and that's why he's falls short of vertical. Tyler there with the forward 2.5 somersaults pike. I have to say, I know that's not Tyler's best forward 2.5 that I've ever seen. It's a little short of vertical, but Tyler has immaculate form.
He does. His leg line and toe point is phenomenal. You sometimes there's a risk with the forward 2.5 pike because of how easily the guys make it and how early they come out. There's sometimes a risk of the toes hitting the underside of the board, and he looked slightly at risk of that there. Oh, the direction.
Wow, that is a beautiful dive from Lorenzo there. Actually dives to the Italian Navy. Fantastic work. It's so sharp through the water. Insane.
I thought he looked very cool in his hurdle step. Like, oh, I'm not even doing really a big dive. And I think, okay, but then as soon as he just left the board, just the direction, the start was perfect. And exactly, the finish was great. A slight loss of leg form, which you see from most people.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a multiple reverse twister in particular.
Yeah, it is. The G-force that sends your legs out sideways is strong, and it is really hard to keep those legs together. And Giovanni there, his teammate, backing it up with that one's a full out, so that's the forward 2.5 somersaults with 1 twist, but with the twist happening after the somersaulting rotations. A beautiful dive. Again, we spoke earlier about Elena having her own style of diving. I think a lot of the Italians have their own style, and it's so nice. The form is so beautiful. Final diver of the round, we've got Todd with the forward 2.5 somersaults pike. It's a really nice dive from Todd there. He's upright. He's just missed his entry. I think he maybe thought he was going a little bit fast and just rushed into the end a little bit.
Yeah, just missing some of those extra finishing pits. It looked maybe a bit rushed on the takeoff, and then maybe rushed on the entry as well. He had the time. He just needed to keep his composure and finish the dive off as best as he could have. But by no means a bad dive.
Absolutely. On to round 3 now. We got James with the reverse 2.5 somersaults tucked. So we saw this pike from Jack Law in the first round. James has opted for it tucked.
I mean, there's certainly no reason why James can't do this pike, but also the main focus for these guys is the 3-meter event, and he's doing the reverse 3.5 somersaults tuck on the 3-meter. So you often can use the 1-meter springboard as a kind of lead-up process to build you into your 3-meter event. The technique for pike and tuck is different, isn't it? So
absolutely,
maybe he doesn't want to change that style of technique. Just keep things consistent.
And that's where his reverse 2.5 tuck is so high. For me, James has one of the best hurdles. He's so powerful. He generates so much height from every single hurdle that I see him do.
And it's still consistent, and that's what's so impressive. He's developed his list a lot over not very much time, and he's still kept solid and consistent, and the hurdle most of the time hasn't let him down.
Absolutely. I mean, in that one, he's almost too high, and that's why he's just over-rotated a little bit. He needs to get his feet out a little bit shorter. Yona there with the forward 2.5
I just
somersaults, one
can't. I
twist.
can't really help but just slightly laugh at how much the board will just be stopping for Yona as it smashes into the water. It's just, it's just
It
he's
is
too
really
big.
hard. I mean, to get that much water, even the fact that you get that much water on your legs and wet your legs and then have to make a shape and try and grab on when you've got so much G-force acting against you, that is really difficult.
Now
Jack
that's
Law
class
there.
from Jack.
Wow.
He had the same direction, reverse again. But he still attacks the hurdle, and I would say overall he got a great hurdle then. Weight just about the right place, and then he sent that dive up exactly where it needed to be. But the form was perfect. I don't believe we saw Jack lose his leg form there either, which is another kind of standout.
Absolutely,
thing.
Jack's twisting form on that dive and all of his other twisting dives is pretty fantastic. It's definitely world class.
And Connor back 1.5 somersaults, piked.
And another great dive from Connor there. He's fallen slightly back off the board, and so it goes very, very slightly over a vertical, and that's where you see that 5.5 creep in from Judge 2 there. But again, we spoke about the knee save earlier. Fantastic work through his legs through the water to give that illusion that he is going in upright.
Yeah.
I think he'll be pretty pleased with that one.
Yeah, very tidy. Unfortunately as well, when the guys are doing some of the dives that they are doing, if you aren't doing those dives, it can be difficult to get the scores.
Absolutely. That's a back 2.5 somersaults there for Francesco.
That sort of, I mean, that's kind of the result we often see in a men's 1 meter event, particularly the prelim, on the back 2.5. Some of the guys who wear the dives, like it's there or thereabouts, but maybe not quite there. It's particularly in the morning, just running out of space.
Absolutely, yeah. It is again such a difficult dive for the DD that you actually get for it, and you know it is still the morning. People do tend to fire up a little bit better in the afternoon and in the evening, and I'm sure that if he did that a little bit later on, he'd probably be making that round perfectly upright.
Yeah, let's see. Good
Wow.
job from Jake. So I think Jake definitely likes spinning in a pike position, I would say. Some of his pike movements look really good, so it's great to see him taking the 2.5 dives on the 1 meter springboard in the tuck position, that inward 2.5, and making a good job of it. The turnover speed is still there.
Up next, we've got Jordan with the back 2.5 somersaults tuck.
Jordan isn't someone who is going to find the making of this dive hard, though, is he?
Absolutely not. I train with Jordan every day, and it infuriates me how easy it is for him. And just
Too easy.
showing that there. He makes these dives so easy. The real challenge for him is actually getting out in the right place. For some people that don't make the dive so easily, it's almost easier to kick your feet right up at the ceiling, grab your hands back and go through.
As fast as you can, just slam the hands back, whereas Jordan has to really control that. I didn't think his kick in the moment looked too high.
Yeah, I think it was a touch too high, and he's pulled back quite fast with his arms, which has just meant that the speed has carried on going.
Yeah.
Leon there with the forward 3.5 somersaults tuck. That dive is looking so easy
And not
for
even
Leon.
not the best takeoff. He was a little bit back on the springboard, and he's still flown round. He's able to get that pike out, where you come out of the tuck shape early and straighten your legs, and that is a demonstration to the judges that this dive is comfortable for him.
Absolutely. He's saying to the judges, hello everyone, check out my class. Aussie up next with the reverse 1.5 pike. Again, a simpler list in comparison to some of the bigger boys, but he's doing it phenomenally well.
I think, sort of like you said about Tyler, I think Oscar, his leg line, a lot of his form, that's something that stands out to me. And ultimately, I think he has to do that when you're doing simpler dives.
Absolutely. I think, actually, in a way, when you're doing simpler dives, there is more pressure to do those dives well, because if you have the DD to back it up, you know that if there is a slight drop, you've still got the difficulty there. If you haven't got that difficulty, there is quite a lot of pressure on you to make sure you are diving well and consistent, and you have to be really showing off those little bits that get the extra half mark here and there. I think he's done that really well.
Robbie Lee, reverse, 2.5 somersaults tuck.
Wow, okay, I have to say, I panicked a little bit on his hurdle there.
Yeah.
You probably saw me dodge my head back a little bit. I thought he was going to fall in with the little arm I don't even know, arm
Wiggle,
swing that
yeah.
he did, arm wiggle. He's actually done a really good job of getting his legs up into his shape, and he's then just come out of it a little bit too early. He just needs to poke those feet right up at the ceiling and get his hands back just to pull it in upright.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes it's about recovery of these dives. Not every hurdle is going to be 100% fantastic.
No,
I don't think any hurdle is perfect, so
Yeah.
you've got to be able to go from all of those positions, and Robbie's demonstrated that really well there. Romano there showing some
classier.
really nice class with that back 1.5 pike. And yet another diver that's got great leg line, lovely toe point, shows the form off through the water. He's just missing a little bit of that rip entry.
A little bit. Yeah, maybe all of his body not finding the exact same entry point, but almost there. That's the goal, isn't it? Every inch of your body to try and find the same line.
Absolutely, that is where we get the rips from. That's such a shame there for Tyler with the reverse 2.5 somersaults. Look, he's actually done a great dive. He's kicked it in the perfect position. He's just missed his hands through the end and ended up, well, headbutting the water.
Yeah.
And that's why you get that splash thrown up. And that is so frustrating when you do that. Sometimes it just can't be helped.
I think that's when sometimes it's good to see the replays, but I think that's exactly what happened. His arms were there, and they just bounced apart. And yeah, face planted.
That's a really powerful dive from Lorenzo, just marginally tight to the board.
I think that was pulled. I think his shoulders have extended too far back over the springboard, and I think he knew that. When you're in that position, you feel like you can't execute the dive confidently anymore. You just kind of go into sort of protection mode.
Absolutely. I think if you know you're tight to the board, the thing that you want to do is miss the board. So you do the things that you need to do. So you kick your feet a little bit higher than you normally would, and you keep your hands close to your body. And in doing that, it just means that his rotations carried on going a little bit more than he would want, and that's why he's pulled it over. Countryman Giovanni up next with the back 2.5 somersaults tuck. Another diver that I'm very jealous of with this dive.
You and me both.
And that's why it's insane. He is so high. He pushes the board so much, and the board flings him off like he's weightless.
How is this feeling for you, Ross? Obviously, you are watching your fellow competitors compete in a discipline that you're very good at. Is it a challenge, or is it nice to be able to analyse also?
I think on one hand it's really nice to see everyone and not have the pressure of being in it. But on the other hand, I am a little gutted that I'm not in there with them. That's obviously what I want to be doing. That's where I want to be. But, you got to keep going, keep smiling. It's all good. We'll get there one day. And Todd there with the back 1.5 pike to finish off that round. Just pulling it slightly over a vertical. I think it's really tough when you're doing your first senior nationals to be up against all of these Olympians and world medalists and Olympic medalists. And sometimes that is something that make you feel that pressure a little bit more. And I think maybe he's feeling that a little bit today. I know, again, he was on a junior GB camp that I was coaching on a few weeks ago, and he was fantastic in that. He's definitely got that sharpness there.
Yeah.
And I think maybe just the pressure a little bit this morning is getting to him, but he's halfway there. He's got 3 more dives, and I'm sure we'll see some great stuff from him.
Exactly, and as we saw, we had a quick look at the results there. James, our first diver in the start list, actually our first diver on the leaderboard as well, as we are halfway through the competition. This is James's back 2.5 somersaults in the tuck position as well. Really, really nearly. I thought he had that. It was only his James. Just to let you guys know, this pool is 5.8 meters deep.
Yeah,
so
this is the deepest pool in Europe, I believe. The deepest indoor pool in Europe. And he has just floated down to the bottom to push off. I think maybe he needed a second underwater to just
cool himself
down. Again, it's no drama. It's just not the dive that he will be wanting to do because he definitely has that quality in there.
Yeah. But I think he only needed to really just reach his arms back further. He was there. He won't have loads of time on this dive, and no one necessarily has loads of time. But by no means a drop.
That is a wonderful reverse
big.
2.5 somersaults tuck there from
That's
Yona.
big.
That is classy. That is high. It spins fast. He's out early and he drills the end.
I'm glad to see some 8s come on that, even an 8.5. The 8.5 won't count, of course, but it's good to see that the judges are willing to reward, because that's exactly what we want to see, and we want to see that kind of executed in the final, and that's when the scores will be flowing.
Jack Law up next with the inward 2.5 somersaults pike, 3.4 in difficulty. And he makes it look like a required dive. In the junior events, the athletes do required dives, which are limited in DD, so they are the simple dives. And Jack makes these hard dives look so easy. It's so impressive.
And he's not. It's just good to see him just going with the flow. He's not letting the restart affect him that much. That's just exactly what he needs to do. Yeah, and you're right with 1 meter. You're limited on degree of difficulty in a way, because of the things that you can do, but in some ways you're not actually rewarded for how hard some of the stuff are compared to, say, 3 meter.
Absolutely. That's such a shame there for Connor. I have to say, that is one of the best hurdles I've seen in this whole event. It's so consistent. He's going sky high in the air. I don't think he was actually ready for how high he was. He's put his feet up just very slightly up too much, and that's where he just pulls it a little bit over.
Francesco, reverse 2.5 tuck.
Wow, okay.
Did he slip?
So that was a reverse 2.5 tuck. Yeah, I do believe he slipped out. It looked like he slipped out of his left leg there, and that's why you see his legs fly apart. He's actually done a really, really good job of getting that onto his head. I know we've seen some catastrophes in previous years with people slipping out and, well, wiping out as well. I think that's not what he would have liked, not what he expected.
No, but it was strange because it's like he slipped when he was trying to come out. So he was actually in the right place, but
Wow, Jake there with the forward 3.5 somersaults pike. As we said earlier, physically gifted. Yeah. Insane.
And he can spin in a pike shape.
Absolutely.
So well.
It's not the highest dive. It's not up with Jack Law or James or Yona's height. Yeah. But he spins again like Sonic.
Yeah, his hips just when he's somersaulting, it looks like it's still accelerating. I think that's when you know that someone's turnover speed is so good. Sometimes it looks like it's slowing down. Oh, Jordan.
Oh, that's just such a shame there for Jordan. Again, it's a great takeoff. He's up in the air. He comes out a little bit early, and I realises that he's done that, and he just has a slight leg crimp through the end. He's got to keep those legs straight. I think I always say to my divers when I'm coaching, you're better off keeping them straight and landing a little short than bending them slightly and getting it to upright. Yeah,
you are, but obviously it happens so fast. Making those decisions in the moment can be really difficult because it's a reaction. It's
absolutely
not a sort of kind of considered slow choice.
I mean, you have what, a second and a half to figure out how to do a reverse 2.5 somersaults pike and where to come out and how to finish the dive. That's a great back 2.5 somersaults there from Leon.
It is. Again, considering that he's a junior, and the technique looks there. He still even though the dive's hard, he still looks like he actually has the composure. He's not rushing some of the technique. He's letting the dive happen still.
Absolutely. He has that level that we were talking about earlier with the women, the level of comfort. I think the judges feel fairly comfortable watching him. And that's a beautiful single twister forward, 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist there for Oscar. I think he'll be really happy with this. This is his first senior national championships as well. And I think he's turned up and he has come to play with the dives that he's he's doing them really, really well.
And it's a great experience opportunity, and actually I think that's why a lot of these guys choose to do this. They aren't here to fight for the medals. It's to dive with some of the best divers in the country, some of the best divers in the world. Another opportunity to do your lists.
Absolutely. Robbie Lee there with the back 2.5 somersaults tuck. Again, I can't express how hard this dive is, and the fact that Robbie is a platform specialist and he's down on 1 meter doing the back 2.5 tuck.
Just
So
chucking
impressive.
it off, throwing it off, having a laugh. Why not? Good man.
Got Romano up next with the reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. So the same DD as the back 2.5, but in a way much easier because you have the hurdle to generate all of that height. That's such a shame there for Romano. He's just fallen off the board slightly forwards, and then it's really, really difficult to get your legs into that shape and regenerate the speed. That's where you see him just landing a little bit on his shoulders there, on his back.
Yeah, it was never really there, was it? It was always just kind of fighting that.
Up next we've got Tyler. Opting for the simple back 1.5 pike and executing it phenomenally well.
It's hard to explain why that's so nice, but every single part of the dive just taken care of perfectly. It is an easier dive, but actually, doing a back 1 somersaults pike for 8s is better than doing a back 2 somersaults tuck to your shoulders for 4.5.
Absolutely. And that, again, is the decision that some of the divers have to make. Do I do the simple one and make sure it's good, or do I go for the harder one, even though it's a little bit more risky? And there, Lorenzo with the back 2.5, he has taken the risk, and I would say that that has paid off really well for him.
Somersault speed, just carrying him around there and sneaking it in. It's effective. It's nicely done. I suppose the thing with Tyler though as well is, or making that choice, not many people would actually be able to do a back 1.5 pike that actually looked that nice. So for Tyler, maybe it's an easier decision because he knows that he can do it so nicely.
Absolutely. I think when you know you've got that to pull out of your back pocket, it is a slightly easier decision. When you when you can do a back 1.5 pike for an 8, but you could also do it for a 6. That's when you might take the risk with the back 2.5.
Yeah.
Oh, the reverse 2.5 somersault took there for Giovanni. Really great takeoff. He's just dipped his head in there through the water, and that's where you get that little bit of splash thrown up. Again, no dramas, 5.5s. I'm sure he'll be wanting to improve that if he's in the finals later.
He will, for sure. I mean, we saw a small head shake from him. But obviously the guys of that standard, they really are perfectionists.
Todd there with the reverse 1.5 somersaults pike. You can see that tape on his shoulder. I'm not sure if he's been struggling with a shoulder injury there.
I'm not sure.
That comes with diving, doesn't it? It comes with a lot of elite sport, but diving in particular is pretty rough.
You know that very well, don't you, Ross?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I do. I'm sat here in a sling.
So, despite a restart, Jack Law is in the lead.
Yeah, and that just shows the class that he possesses, doesn't it?
I'm actually quite stunned.
It's almost frustrating.
I'm sure James will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is a dive it's a very difficult dive, but it's a dive that James is very competent at. Inward 2.5 somersaults now, but in the piped position.
Wow.
Yes,
I have to say,
James.
out of everyone in the world,
Yeah.
I think I like James Heatley's inward 2.5 somersaults pike the most.
I think I'd go with you on that. It sort of reminds me of Jake a little bit, but Jake being a slightly younger version. When he gets into a pike shape, particularly in a front or an inward spinning dive, it accelerates. The pike shape looks nice. It's very tight. It's got this rounded look to it, and it just looks like it keeps motoring.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no stopping him once he's in there.
No. Yeah,
We got
great
Yona
dive.
with the same dive now, just much longer legs. And it doesn't matter, he is so powerful. Again, that's another fantastic dive.
And with what's really impressive, I think, with that dive for Yona is his legs are so long that he can't do that dive unless he's over the board. So he has to make sure he does the dive higher than the board, otherwise he's hitting the board.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's...
So he has to trust his power.
He
his
has
ability
the
to
length
make
of
the
legs
dive.
that if he was to make it how some of the other divers make it, he would clatter his feet on the end of the board. So he has to do it all above the board and then get out of it to go past the board. And that's the full in, the forward 2.5 somersaults, one twist with the twist happening before the somersaulting rotations there for Jack. Again, really nice, so classy, just very, very slightly over vertical through the end. I mean, I don't think he'll be necessarily disappointed in that, but I know that he'll have more in the bank for later on in the afternoon for the finals.
Certainly. And in a way, I think it'd actually be a confidence. He won't like that he's restarted, but I think it'll be a confidence boost that he's, at the minute, still leading the pack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even with that.
Got Connor up next with the reverse 2.5 tuck.
Go on, lad. Yeah, sneaky.
And what a great
Almost.
dive.
Well done.
I've been so impressed with Connor today,
Yeah.
and I've seen him in training as well. He's doing a fantastic job. Again, his hurdle is looking great. It's consistent. And to be able to do that when you have your harder dives and when you are in that higher pressured environment is a real testament to the work that he's putting in at home. Francesco Porco there with the forward 3.5 somersaults tuck.
He just looks like he's struggling a little bit, Francesco. Just things just landing at not quite vertically as I'm sure he'd like. He's landed, short of vertical there. And obviously you can see with the scores reflected that.
Up next we've got Jake, the reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. And that's a great dive from Jake there. He's pushed himself very slightly too far forward off the board, but he's put his feet in the exact right place and he's put his hands back on the water, pulled it in through upright with a fantastic rip.
Yeah, nicely done.
Again, we've spoken about that challenge of if your hurdle isn't perfect, how do you get to the end? And he's done that really well. His hurdle wasn't maybe the one that he necessarily would have wanted, but he's done a fantastic job through the end.
Yep.
Up next, we've got Jordan with the reverse 1.5 somersaults, 2.5 twists. And that's more like it from Jordan. That's a fantastic dive. Again, just showing his class with how high he is. He's got so much time. It's really, if you compared him against some of the other divers and you put both of their dives at the same time, you would see he's probably got an extra second in the air in comparison.
Oh, I'd love that. Or I would have.
And me. I would. Sometimes that extra second would be very, very helpful.
Oh, yes.
Leon there with the reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. Again, not the best hurdle that I've seen him do.
He was fighting, keeping his toes over the end.
So high in the end. And he comes out, you can see him kick to the dish. His hands are placed flat on his thighs.
And then he holds that.
Oh, it's insane.
He
Love
holds that for a significant period of time, actually a bit too long. And that's where he's just over-rotated a little bit. But I saw him do the reverse 3.5 on 3 meter for 90 points a couple of weeks ago. So he has to make that dive easily.
Absolutely, and that's a fantastic dive there for Oscar with the forward 2.5 somersaults pike. Again, lower on the DD in comparison with some of the divers, so he's not opting for the forward 3.5 somersaults tuck. But he's doing great dives with great form. His technique's looking fantastic. I think he'll be really pleased with that.
Robbie's 5th dive. Oh, no.
That's such a shame there for Robbie. That from that bounce into the hurdle, you can tell that he shifted way too far forwards. And to be fair to him, he took it. He took it like a trooper, and he went into his shape and tried to work his absolute best. But his feet have hit just before his hands. and therefore that is a failed dive because technically it doesn't complete the dive number that was entered.
Yeah. And in that position, you might think, oh, it's better to restart, but actually he was probably too far over the end to be able to stop the momentum.
Absolutely, I
If
don't
you
think
fall
he would
in,
have been
that's a
able to.
failed dive.
It's a great dive there from Romano with the back 1.5 twister, the back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist. Again, opting for a slightly different dive to some of the other twists. So we've seen the full outs, we've seen the forward 2.5 somersaults with the 1 twist. We've seen the reverse twist with the reverse 1.5 somersault, 2.5 twist. That's the back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist. Again, physically, quite difficult actually.
Yeah.
Just not fully reflected in the DD that's given. And that's the reverse 1.5 twist from Tyler. I have to say, I loved every single part of that dive. He just seemed to go a little bit floppy. He seemed to go like a banana through the water.
I think he did an inverse knee. I think he scooped rather than rolled through the water.
Yeah, absolutely. It was.
Maybe he thought he was short, and that's his way of trying to force his heels over his head more. But he didn't actually need to do that.
Yeah, I think he's overcorrected a little bit there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful
Yes,
dive
nice,
there from Lorenzo with the forward 3.5 somersault tuck. Again, once he's in that tuck shape, there is no stopping him. And that's why you see the 8s there, an 8 from Judge 4.
Yeah, and then a really clean entry on that one too. And the same dive now from his synchro partner, Giovanni. Let's see who can do it better.
Battle of the 107s, battle of the forward 3.5 somersaults tuck.
Well, and actually we have Todd's dive, and then after we've done that, in the next round we have 3 forward 3.5 somersaults piked. Ooh.
I have to say I'm looking forward to seeing those in a row.
Oh yes, me too. The first Giovanni's. Oh.
That's such a shame for Giovanni. He's just stepped down from his hurdle with his toes slyly over. We like to call it hanging 10, where all 10 toes are over the end of the board. He's done a really good job of pressing into the board and getting his hips up and over into the spin. I think he's just lost a little bit where he is because of where he was on the board in the start.
You can start to second guess yourself, and he was actually spot on, but he didn't believe it, so he's not got the entry that he would have hoped.
That's Todd there with his most difficult dive of his program, the reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. And actually, I think he's done a really good job.
It was really nearly on, wasn't it? A hair short, but it just needed to be a bit more upright to get his hands back that bit further. But the dive was there. He did, I would say, complete the dive.
Absolutely. I think, actually, from that hurdle, he was just his weight was very slightly shifting over his toes. And if he was just a little bit more upright into that squat, that's where you'll really get the spin speed kick in through the takeoff.
Yeah. So this is exciting now. You can see the top 3, Jack, Yona, and James. We have all of those 3 guys diving now, but James, Yona, then Jack in an inverse, and they're all doing an forward 3.5 somersaults in the pike position. Probably, not by degree of difficulty, but probably the hardest dive in this event.
I would say so. I think, it's 3.3. The inward 2.5 pike is 3.4, but for me personally, and I think for a lot of the boys down there, the inward 2.5 pike is probably the more favoured of the two.
And you are, maybe actually not for these guys, but you're more reliant on a good hurdle step here, aren't you? There's a lot of dive from only the 1 metre springboard, so.
Absolutely, and that's where the pressure comes in because the hurdle is so difficult to execute. You've got to be really on it when you're doing the forward 3.5 somersaults in the pike position. But it is not a problem for James Heatley. That is incredible. He, again, he nearly brushes his feet on the ceiling.
So fast. So fast. I hope you can see what I mean by that motoring. Just the somersault speed just keeps going. And the hurdle step positioning was great, but he had to stomp the board. It wasn't the best timing, but he just pushed through it.
Absolutely.
He's just like, no, board, you're going where I want you to go. Bang.
And that is one of James's strengths. He is so powerful.
Yeah.
His leg strength is insane, and he also has the speed to back that up as well.
Let's go, Yona.
Oh, that's such a shame for Yona. Again, it's really hard sometimes, isn't it? Following someone that's done exactly the same dive and done it really well can be very, very difficult.
I mean, you can see, obviously, Jona has a height advantage to James. I think Jona's hurdle step, it wasn't bad, but his weight looked slightly further back than he probably wants to be a tiny bit leaning forward just to help him get all the push he can. And again, it's just maybe was slowing down. Jack's turn.
And again, another great dive. I think he's just dipped his head in very slightly. It's hard to see on the live stream because it goes to that underwater shot a little early. But I think he's just dipped his head in through the end, and that's why you see those 6.5s rather than the 7s and the 7.5s.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that, James is definitely looking the strongest. You know that. I mean, he's done 4.5 pike, hasn't he? And I know that's something he wants to work towards. When you see that as a lead up, it's easy to see why.
Absolutely. Up next, we've got Connor with the reverse 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist. Another great dive. I think Connor will be over the moon with how he's performed this morning. It's dropped him very, very slightly short of vertical, but again, his hurdle looks consistent.
Yeah, every single one, and he's been bang on. And it's, he's a young guy. But I think a bright future for sure. It's a great experience, a great takeaway to be consistent, to hold your own, to not be fazed by the competitors that you're up against.
Absolutely. Oh, Francesco there with the inward 2.5 somersaults pike, and beautiful through the end.
Really, that's a perfect entry. I think to get higher scores, he wants to be higher, but he's been so clever to create that entry. Well done.
Really finesse that pike out there, where you go from the tuck shape into the pike shape before you then line your hands up for the water. Beautiful work.
It's not been, I'm sure, Francesco's strongest performance, but it's always good to finish on a better dive.
And Jake there with the forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist. Again, like you said, so strong in that pike spinning position.
I'd like to see Jake on that. He flicks early. He doesn't need to. It's not. I think I'd rather see him flick later to just carry a bit of that extra somersault speed. So the end of the dive is just a bit more relaxed. He'll get more scores there. Because there's no question mark as to whether or not he can make the dive. He can. I think if he can get that flick a bit later, then he'll just have a bit more. He'll be a bit more relaxed on the end.
And the same dive there for Jordan, and that is fantastic. Yes. I know he'll be a little disappointed with the first couple of dives in his program, but the last two, absolutely phenomenal. He's really showing his class there. I think maybe he just needed a couple of dives to get into it, shake off those nerves, and now he's looking like he is on form and ready for business.
But again, back into that final, you start from scratch again. He's going to come out all guns blazing, I am sure.
Up next, we've got Leon with the same dive. And again, this time opting for the twist before the somersault. And he is absolutely flying round.
That was a perfect takeoff. I think for Leon, well, maybe you'll disagree. They're like, no, I could have done a bit. I don't know. But to me, that looked perfect. The dive flew round so easy. And he finished it off great as well. Man, that's...
really good work from the youngster, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's not a junior. We didn't watch a junior dive then.
Absolutely not. You could see that on the world stage. Yeah. In a world final, 100%. Up next, we've got Oscar with his hardest dive in the program. The inward 2.5 somersault tuck, and he has done a great job of that. I've watched him train this over the last few weeks, and it's getting there. It is so very close, and I think actually he'll be pretty pleased with that. He's done a really good job there. He's very, very clever through the water. He holds on till the very final moment, and then he sticks his feet right up at the ceiling and pushes his hands through the water as fast as he possibly can.
Well done, Robbie. You finished on a better dive. It's clear from that dive that Robbie is very natural at twisting. He's got a very fast twist. That makes that dive comfortable for him. He's responded well from the disappointment in the previous round.
And it's so hard, isn't it, when you've done a dive. I mean, it's hard when you've dropped a dive, but when you've actually failed a dive and it's been because of the hurdle, to then get back on the board for your final dive and do another hurdle. And he's actually executed that, I would say, as one of his best hurdles of the event.
Yeah.
Romano there with the reverse 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist. Again, very similar to his reverse 2.5 tuck. He's just got his weight a little bit too far forwards into the end of the board.
And then his legs and his hips haven't come back with him. It's just a bit stuck.
Tyler, final dive with one extra twist, 2.5 twist this time. That's such a shame for Tyler. Again, on the hurdle, into his twist, it looks beautiful. He's just lined up a little bit early. There's a little rush through the water.
And he's actually done the same thing, the scoop instead of the roll. He looks phenomenal in the end. Tyler's another good twister. It's nice to see. There's a lot more room left for scores in that dive for Tyler. Absolutely.
And final dive for Lorenzo, one of our Italian divers.
Well, great finish. Probably not his ideal hurdle step, but he's kept fighting. That's the important thing. You keep working the dive. You don't give up on it because you need to keep going. And when you do that, you can get a good entry. You can save it.
And again, we mentioned the feet coming apart in the twist earlier. I think that's where you see the judge there giving the 5. They will have noticed that little flicker of the legs, and you just get deducted for that very, very slightly.
And actually, that's one thing that can happen when you're really fighting to get the dive around. Sometimes it's the form that can be lost because you sort of throw some of that out the window. Like I've got to get it.
Absolutely. I think sometimes you will do a better dive if things like that. If you can rush to an upright entry, you will do better than if you keep the form there, but you end up very short of vertical. And that's obviously the choice he's made there. Oh wow.
Yes,
Giovanni
nice.
there. I have to say, the in-between half tuck for Giovanni, I believe it must be his favourite dive. I don't think I ever see him miss it.
I mean, that was maybe a little bit back, but he's got 9s easily on that dive in a final if he sets that up how he wants to. And even when it was a little bit sat back, just still easy, great entry. I mean, yeah, he's a classy diver. Well done, Giovanni.
Last diver, Todd. With a very nice reverse 1.5 twister, he's drilled the end there, just very, very slightly piped through his body, and that's where you see that reflected in the scores.
Go, yeah. But overall, though, it was a good-looking dive. He looked nice in his twist. The direction was there. It's a better one for him to finish off. That concludes our competition, doesn't it? We will get the results upon you on the screen very shortly. We said at the beginning of that, Ross, we're going to see some big dives, and we did. Well, actually, they have the scores here now, so we'll talk about that. Jack Law, 391.05 with a restart.
Quite ridiculous, really.
Yeah, it is. But still, actually, for a preliminary round, that's a good score. That these guys at the top, they'll be looking to push 400 and, well, probably sail over 400 in the final. And I think we will see that from a lot of them. Very strong performance from James, Yona as well, obviously in 3rd place. And then we have Giovanni and Lorenzo, the synchro pair, actually pretty close together. 6th is Jordan, 7th Leon Baker, and 8th Jake Passmore. So obviously in that we have quite a few guests.
We do.
So only the top 2 guests can go through.
I believe so. So it'll be Yona and Giovanni through into the final, which is really such a shame, isn't it, for Lorenzo, who's finishing 5th in the event, but can't progress into the final.
But that's probably going to be it for him, unfortunately. But he still had a good run out. It was competently done. I don't really think he had any big misses. There was just extra sharpness for Lorenzo. But yeah, and so that's unfortunate for Jake as well. I don't think he'll find himself in the final, but that means that Tyler will. He's sitting in 9th place at the minute. Obviously, 10th is Francesco Porco for Italy. He will not be in the final, I think, again, because of that guest rule, and also, obviously, he's in 10th anyway. but that gives Oscar a chance.
I believe so. I think possibly Oscar and Connor, is it? Have we got 4?
Yeah,
No,
I
we've got
think
3 Italians and... In fact, I think we've got 3 Italians, Jamaican and Ireland.
So,
Possibly
yeah,
Romano
we
too.
will obviously get that confirmed for you probably later, but those are all the scores from you. I think overall that was a fantastic event. We're going to see a big final, aren't we, Ross?
I think so. I'm very excited for this afternoon. I think there's going to be, again, these huge dives, and I think given the final, given the fact that it's an afternoon or an evening, I think we're going to see them go down for some really great scores.
Let's have it. Well, Ross, you're going to be joining me later on again. We will have the finals for the 1 meter competitions, the women and the men's 1 meter finals coming up at 2:15. So please, guys, join us again for that. We want you all to come back. It's been a great prelim, so we'll see you very soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Attention, please. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Not all supplements are created equal. At HealthSpan, our omega-3 oil is sustainably sourced from the South Pacific Ocean. We find our turmeric on the southern slopes of India, and our cod liver oil comes from the cold, crisp seas of Greenland. We work hard to seek out the best ingredients for all our supplements, because that's the HealthSpan way. We're healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements in-store or direct to your door.
SIM-only plans? There are always so many tempting options. So you jump headfirst into a long contract, which keeps you locked in for 12 months.
Somebody let me out!
At Labara, we offer great value plans and total flexibility. You can get 10 gigs of data, unlimited UK minutes and texts, and 100 international minutes for just £10 a month. And you can change or cancel anytime.
Now I feel free.
Buy now at labara.co.uk.